Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. As mentioned, today is Monday. The news we have on the docket at 9:45, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing Final, 9:45. 10 a.m. we have the ISM Manufacturing Index, probably our most significant data point today. Also get construction spending. Bank of England speaker also at 10. And we also, where is it? Construction spending right here as well. We also have Lagarde at 12:30, Goolsbee at 12:45, and Powell is on the calendar at 1 o'clock. Not sure if there is a Q&A or anything with that, but we need to be aware that he's on the calendar. Let's move on to our charts. All right, here we have our chart of the S&P 500 full session daily bars. Just reminding ourselves what we're kind of getting into on a bigger picture perspective. This is our March range that we were working to get above. We got above it. 5821's the composite point of control for almost 3 years at this point. The most traded price is right here. That was my big target. Pushed above it, pulled back into it, found support, and we're able to get the high on news after hours. So that's noted. But the big thing that I'm just paying attention to here is we're in a little island area. And this little island area, it's very balanced. We see our point of controls right here. It's the 5916s. And this area is very balanced, but we are overall here still kind of keeping an upward skew. We were able to take the high. We were unable to take the low. But that being said, it's very balancy within this area. Just zooming into the most recent days, and we'll look at this a little bit more on the market profile chart. But here, what we're seeing is this spike up was on news that was able to take the high and take that high and really see that there isn't as much interest to trade those prices, at least not yet. But if you remove that news from the equation, this is we're seeing this VPOC offered pretty well, meaning there seems to be some overhead and some sell interest in this area that is kind of pushing prices down. But we do know that there's obviously buyers that are trying to counteract that. So let's go to a smaller time frame chart and look at this a little bit more specifically. Okay, here we are on our market profile chart. This chart is RTH only. So let's look at what's important here. This is the low. Let me show our entire kind of island situation that I mentioned previously, just so we can kind of remember where we are. Here is, so yeah, this is that whole island situation I mentioned. Here is the 5821s right down here. Also have a naked VPOC just below. And the thing, now we see we're also in another little kind of like balance area within the balance area. Interesting, huh? So that's what's going on. Let's consider that. So here we are. The thing to notice about what's going on here, we're in an area of balance, right? I mentioned how there's like overlap of value through here, which there is. However, it is kind of very subtly seeing value kind of move down just a little bit, just in a very subtle way. We have values like here kind of stretches, but it moves lower, and here still moves lower. So subtly moving lower, and then also at the same time, what we're seeing is these pushes higher are all excesses. Like even though we did shoot way above here, the interest up here seems to be less. There seems to be less interest up here. And on these probes lower, it's still kind of less trading than obviously value, but we are seeing a bit more interest on pushes lower. And so for me, if that continues, it could continue or it could not, but if it does continue, then the key target below is the 58.21s, which I've been talking about. And if that does not continue, then our key target would be balance high, the naked VPOCs we have up here, and then the 6,000s. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and plan for specific price action. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart with showing the overnight session in lavender. Just a couple things about where we are on this chart. The big thing to mention is this 59.16 price. This is important because it is it's the most traded price in this micro composite area of balance since May 12th. It's also the prior month's VPOC. The prior month's VPOC. And it's also our settlement. So there's a lot of attention here. And on top of that, we haven't tested it. We opened and we were unable to reach up and test that settlement so far. Also noticing this happened, what was it, a week ago? 519, we have a naked settle up here. So sellers were in control from the open on Globex and they made an attempt to push, but were unable to get to the yesterday's low so far, but have not really been able to get above the prior day's value yet and get to that key area. So looking at the prior day's VPOC, which is the O2s up to 16s, this area is very important. This area is very, very, very important. This area right here. So let's go over our ideas today. We'll begin with bearish ideas, although, we're in a very balanced area. It is sloping downward from where we are now. But as I talked about, value migrating lower, but it's very balanced. But regardless, so here's the thing. If we, the easiest bearish idea, like I said, here's our settlement and like the price that everybody's looking at. Here's our overnight high. If we do not test our overnight high, if we can't get above this area, if we kind of hold sentry or however, but if we do not get to the overnight high, the obvious target that we're going to look for is going to be the overnight low. Noting we do have a pretty decent potential excess there, which we'll discuss. But anyway, regardless, the fact is, if we don't get above the overnight high, then I'm going to be looking for the overnight low. If the overnight low is not immediately rejected for higher prices, then I would be open for a test of, yesterday's low, which is also the prior week's low, which is also our remaining gap zone here left from the 20, whatever it is. But regardless, so if we can't get the overnight low, then, just by process of elimination and going with the value migrating lower, I'll be looking for a test of the overnight low and potentially yesterday's low / prior week's low. Now, this is the first place where we could see actually sellers had come in and then buyers sort of step in. We could see a lick check in this area. If we see a lick check, then we're just back in balance or potentially trading higher. But if we lose this gap zone, if we start to lose the gap zone, then for me, obviously, where I'll be looking, the next key test will be the 58.21s right here, the price I've been talking about for quite a while. Now, the thing is, we have an excess down here. I'll note it, but also the way that selling has happened is we've just seen selling come in, see an excess, basically show us that there's a willingness to trade those prices. Then we push up to these really well-offered areas. And we think they're going to go the other way, but they just kind of continue. So that would be kind of something that we'd have to see to see the shorts defeat this pseudo excess here. But regardless, if we can't get to the overnight high and we start working lower below the overnight value, then we're looking for the overnight low. And if the overnight low is not rejected, then we're looking for potentially tests of the gap zone. The gap zone could lick check and reverse, but if it does not, and if we keep working, then the 58.21s are the next level. Could this happen with a test above the overnight high? Certainly. But the thing is this, for me, I'm very unlikely to see us push here and then want to go short, because I think that there's a potential for there to be stops up here. There might not be, but there's a potential for it. So I would be a little hesitant to go short on a test here unless I get a really good setup. However, if I see a test up here and then fall back into yesterday's range, overnight range, then that could green light the short on reversion. Reversion back to yesterday's VPOC, potentially the overnight VPOC, or maybe for that whole trade that I mentioned just now for the overnight low after the overnight high is already taken. So the key for me, like I said, I'm open to the short idea if we continue to show that we don't want to trade up in this area between 5,900 up to 5,916. If we get into this area and start making hay, well, then that would be our long ideas. Let's go over those long ideas. So really we have, here's our overnight low. Here's that little bit of an excess. So if this overnight low is preserved, maybe we get one pullback into this excess, but the excess is showing support and we revert above century. Here's this thing holding above century, then I would expect us to test the overnight high at 0.925 currently. And if we get into this area that I talked about, O's to 16s, that's where things could start to get interesting. Our next target above century would obviously be the settlement and that price, 59.16 I've been talking about. 59.16, as I said, we could see the rejection here and we're just outside in. Or if we see stops go off at 59.16 and we start to see rotations expand into this price, then I would be up for continuation higher. What are the next targets? I'd be looking for the 40s. The 40s are a big target. I mentioned them in the CT chat room the other day. We didn't quite get to them. We got to the 20 halves, but the 40s are my big target, 36 to 40s up here. That's the next big target. If we get to 36 to 40 and prices are not rejected, then I'm just on runners to mid-century to prior week's high. Like all of these targets up here, I would just go zone to zone, and I would go zone to zone because I know that there's resistance up here. Like I showed in the prior chart, a lot of excesses up in this region. But if we see stops go off and rotations expand, then through the 40s, then it's mid-century to the prior week's high in this VPOC, and then the 82s are the big target up here, which is also in confluence with the prior month's high, our balance high. 87s, that's the RTH, and 08s, 6,008s is the full session. So those are our targets. What could our nothing day be today? Our nothing day would be just something that kind of, and this is pretty high percentage, guys, that we get some kind of a nothing day. A nothing day would include a test of the gap zone, most likely, that doesn't really go anywhere, and a test into this 1620 area, 09 to 16 area, and doesn't really go anywhere. So any chop within this area is going to be nothing. There could be opportunity for some outside in trades. We also, a nothing day could also happen with a take of the overnight low that doesn't get the prior day's low. Like we take the overnight low, everybody thinks that we're going to push for the gap zone, but we don't. And we just instead get a higher low. That would have to happen quickly. I think if we push and test the overnight low, we'd have to see a very quick lick check to see that nothing day, which is very possible. But alternatively, if we take the overnight low and we don't see that lick check, then I would expect at least this test, which still could turn into the nothing day. But that's what I got for you. Our nothing day would be something that really, to be honest with you, would create an RTH profile with some overlapping value versus this prior day. And any type of excursion that would be interesting would be below the gap zone or above the 16s to the 40s. So that's what I got for you today. Hopefully this is complete. Hope you're having a good day. What just happened? Okay, I'm not sure. Hopefully that didn't screw up the video. But anyway, hope you're having a great day. Hope your great day continues, and I hope you find some way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L. That's what I got for you. Any questions, ask me in the chat room. Ciao.